Fate, a simple gatekeeper, possesses a bizarre and unique gluttony skill, a seemingly failed ability that leaves him constantly hungry. On top of that, he is incredibly weak and frequently bullied by those who hired him. They would even throw money on the ground and force him to pick it up, calling him a useless maggot. In times like these, only the holy knights stand up to protect the weak like Fate, and today it was Roxy Hart who appeared to save him. With a look of immense compassion, Roxy Hart offered her hand to help the pitiful young man up. But not wanting to be a burden to others, Fate believed that he had to solve his own problems. He shouldn't get involved with the knights, his self-esteem so low that he felt they should focus on others in the kingdom instead of him. His gluttony skill always left Fate ravenous after a hard day of gatekeeping. The young man would head to his usual tavern to treat himself to a bowl of soup with bread and cheap wine, as his poverty had made him forget what meat even tasted like. The owner would sigh, hoping he wouldn't end up like his predecessors. The only things awaiting Fate were overwork and never-ending problems. He had lived this destitute life in the capital for 5 long years, and he didn't think he could survive much longer. As he was spacing out, his body aching, he spotted some thieves climbing over the wall. Fate immediately ran to inform Lady Roxy, "There are thieves at the eastern wall." "I'm sure of it, even though I have no proof." Lady Roxy solemnly handed him a spear, saying, "I believe you. I'll head there at once. You stand guard here for me." Fate took the spear and waited in the unnerving quiet. He wondered if it was already over. Suddenly, an injured thief came running out. At a glance, it appeared the man was missing an arm. "One of them is escaping." "That can't happen. Lady Roxy told me to stand guard. And if I let him escape, she'll surely get into trouble." Seeing the thief was wounded, Fate immediately charged forward and killed him with a single thrust. The young man froze, unable to believe he had actually won, when suddenly a notification appeared. It stunned Fate. Gluttony skill activated. New skill added to status system. Appraisal skill has been acquired. In this world, 2 types of people exist, their only difference being whether or not they have received a special ability from God. Those with powerful abilities fight monsters and level up to become successful, while those without any are deemed failures. Fate's status system, which was completely normal yesterday, had suddenly seen its stats increase by 100 points. He almost thought it was a dream. The newly activated skills were gluttony, appraisal, and mind reading. Curious Fate wanted to test his new mind reading skill, an ability that allowed him to read another person's thoughts after making physical contact. This seemed to be why, after he eliminated the thief and met Lady Roxy again, all of her innermost thoughts were laid bare for him to read. At the time, the young man had no idea what was happening. Following that incident, Lady Roxy offered Fate a job with the Hart family, helping him, even though she knew it might bring trouble. The young man thought that not only would he escape a life of being overworked, but he would also begin his journey from weak to strong. With no reason to hesitate, Fate immediately accepted Lady Roxy's offer, ready to work alongside her. The other day, Fate would schedule an appointment. As he walked, the young man thought idly about the gluttony skill that made its user feel hungry. Someone had once described it, "The gluttony skill absorbs the souls of the slain, stealing their stats and skills." This meant the more Fate killed, the stronger he would become. He began to think about getting revenge on all those who looked down on him with contempt. Fate started thinking about what he needed to make himself stronger, and just then, he passed a weapon shop. The owner understood his intent at a glance and asked bluntly, "How much money do you have?" Ironically, after 5 years of work, Fate only had 2 silver coins. He was dejected but had to accept the reality that he couldn't afford a single weapon with such a paltry sum. The owner, looking bored, said that if he wanted to buy a weapon with those 2 silver coins, should check out the pile of scrap metal over there. Fate stared at the scrap heap for a long time, thinking that something, even if flawed, was better than nothing. He began to sort through the weapons, looking for one that was still usable. Through his appraisal skill, he could see they were all fragile. This sword covered in dirt and grease is just a piece of scrap. Just like me, he thought. Suddenly, his mind-reading skill caused Fate to accidentally hear the sword's voice. "I will not let you taste failure, so please buy me." After all, his gluttony skill was also a skill that pushed Fate towards becoming a warrior. With the scrap sword that cost 2 coins, the young man went to find goblin fighters to farm stats for his status system. Each time he defeated a goblin, his strength enhancement skill would be added to his power. Fate was motivated to hunt for more, activating his gluttony skill on each one. This made Fate even more vigorous. The sword suddenly praised him, "You're really strong." Fate, curious, asked it, "Why were you being sold, for such a cheap price?" Greed The sword replied pretentiously, I choose my own owner. In other words, you fate are the one. Shup, it specially chose. A single goblin earned him 10 coins. Fate was overjoyed as he could now make more money than his job as a gatekeeper. However, even after killing so many, his level in the status system remained unchanged. Greed seemed to be quite knowledgeable. And reminded its master, the gluttony skill affects your stats directly but doesn't grant experience points. It is a skill that can break the very principles of the gods. It's best if you don't let anyone know about this. Fate was utterly astonished that his sword knew so much about the gluttony skill. Greed claimed it was because it and Fate were alike. Hearing this, Fate sighed and wearily, but Greed immediately comforted him. You are not alone. You have me understand. After hearing these words, Fate felt more motivated to fight than ever before, a true weak to strong transformation. From now on, he decided to put his faith in this sword. Greed confidently replied, I understand. It's a pleasure to meet you, Fate. I will be by your side until the very end. After a long session of grinding, Fate had killed 38 goblins, earning 3 silver coins and 12 copper coins. This was more money than he had struggled to earn over the past several years. His life was seemingly different now. Greed advised Fate to use this money wisely. Immediately, Fate invested some of the money at a blacksmith's to refurbish Greed. With the rest, the young man planned to buy some new clothes. Greed began to nag again. Be sure to use it reasonably if you want to possess a true treasure. I repeat, possess a treasure. Fate's head began to ache from all the nagging. He was exhausted and his walking became unfocused, and he accidentally bumped into an intimidating man. The man warned Fate, if you don't watch where you're going, you'd better be careful. Suddenly, Fate heard the desperate inner voice of the girl being dragged away. Someone please save me. Through his appraisal eye, he saw the man's name was Kasim Vlerik. Level 15, however, he didn't possess the gluttony skill. He wondered how he would handle it if this Kasim had a hidden skill. Regardless, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing, so Fate decided to act. As he followed them, Greed warned in a panic, I won't stop you, but this is a terrible idea. Please don't be reckless. Fate, even knowing that his mind was made up, he couldn't let this happen, as terrified screams began to echo from inside the warehouse. Kasim cursed the girl cruelly. An orphan like you is useful for the Holy Knight's entertainment. Shouldn't you feel honored? Speak up. The poor girl was too terrified to do anything but cry as he grabbed her. He yanked her hair, forcing her to look up as Kasim continued his threats. You'd better be obedient or else I won't hesitate. I won't hesitate to end you. Her resentful sobs grew louder, and once Kasim finally left, Fate appeared. He comforted her. It's okay, you'll be fine. Let's go while he's not here. But unfortunately, Kasim returned at that very moment. Always following someone around with a kid? A fool like you wants to play hero for justice? Greed then had an idea. The idea was to hide the girl behind some crates, and Fate quickly did so as Kasim taunted him. Why don't you try something? The back of the warehouse is a dead end. Now you want to play hide and seek? Greed believed that in this critical moment, Fate would know what to do. Observing the crates, he formed a plan, but it was immediately seen through. Kasim guessed correctly. You're probably trying to bury me under these crates, huh? Fine. I'll just bury both of you instead. It's useless, just give up. You know when a fool like you shows up and I kill them in front of the orphans. They'll listen to everything I say. Gritting his teeth, Fate charged forward recklessly as Kasim laughed sinisterly. Your plan was exposed, so now you're acting out of desperation. In a single decisive blow, Fate struck him down, leaving him unable to resist. Fate glared at him. You will answer me. Who ordered you to do this? Spit it out now, terrified of dying. Kasim revealed the ringleader's identity, a man named Vlerik, and upon hearing that name, Fate froze for 5 seconds. So it was Vlerik. His heart filled with resentment. After learning the mastermind's true identity, he activated his skill. He used his gluttony skill to devour Kasim, and the status system announced the stat increases: stamina 920, strength 900, magic 670, spirit 500, agility 960. A new skill was added to his arsenal. This meant Fate now had the one-handed sword skill. The young man thought using his arsenal was terrifying, but looking back at the little girl, he realized, oh no, I can't linger here. I need to get out of here before Vlerik's people arrive. He then kindly told the little girl it was time to go back. The kind-hearted Fate took the girl home, and witnessing the emotional reunion between mother and child brought tears to his eyes, giving Greed an opening. Oh. Greed teased, look at your face. Fate felt a bit embarrassed, explaining, He just wanted to help those who were weak like him on his weak to strong journey. But greed argued that doing so would only make Fate's life more precarious. Fate sighed in acceptance, but first things first. He still had to go to Roxy's house to get back to work, and from the look on Fate's face, Greed could tell he was worried. Fate didn't hide it. Of course I am. Her father is the head of a prestigious family in the capital. Greed casually encouraged him. Well then, good luck, which made Fate turn around in frustration. How can you be so relaxed? But then again, Greed was just a weapon for Fate. The moment he stopped in front of the Hart family's castle, Fate was a bit overwhelmed by its sheer size. While his stomach was growling with hunger coupled with his anxiety about meeting his new employer, Roxy appeared in a form that was incredibly lovely. "Welcome to my home." This greeting left Fate so flustered he couldn't speak, only managing to scratch his head. "I can't take my eyes off your beauty." Roxy explained that she sometimes likes to wear dresses like these, and then gave Fate a tour of the estate. Fate wondered why they weren't going inside the mansion. Roxy then led Fate to a tombstone placed in a corner of the courtyard, saying somberly, "My father passed away 5 days ago in Gallia, a land in the south. The land has been overrun by magical beasts and a powerful celestial dragon. Stopping those beasts is the duty of the Holy Knights. The funeral and succession have already been decided, and I will become the new head of the Hart family." Fate had originally imagined he'd be facing an old man, never thinking the situation before him would be so tragic. "I had no idea. In this situation, I came here just to work. I didn't realize I was only thinking about myself." Seeing Fate looking so dazed, Roxy told him not to make that face and to instead help bring laughter back to the Hart household. Fate replied with great determination, "Yes, ma'am, I would be honored to help you." From that moment on, Fate always worked diligently. A week passed in the blink of an eye. His co-workers couldn't help but chuckle at his silly antics. When they first met Fate and saw the young man talking to his sword, they thought he was very strange. Plus, he trembled uncontrollably while eating meat. Fate, looking embarrassed, explained, "It's because this is the first time I've eaten meat in 5 years. Please don't mention it again." Just as he finished speaking, his stomach let out a huge growl. The older men asked, "Hey, isn't it past lunchtime? Have you eaten yet?" Fate laughed sheepishly. "Of course I've eaten. I'm still a growing boy after all." Suddenly, a maid announced that Roxy was calling for Fate to have tea. As Fate walked, he thought, "I can feel the value of work and of being able to eat properly. And yet this hunger from my gluttony skill surpasses all limits and is becoming uncontrollable. It's even terribly painful, a hunger so intense it feels like I could die." The moment Roxy saw Fate's exhausted appearance, she asked with concern, "What's wrong with you?" After calmly sitting down, the young man replied, "It's nothing, but his complexion was terrible." Roxy even stood up, saying she wanted to check if he had a cold. She carefully placed her hand on his forehead. Just as he finished insisting he was fine, he suddenly collapsed to the floor. The hunger was too much, making him unable to even stand. Honestly, this gluttony skill is truly embarrassing. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself resting comfortably in his room, and on the table was a note left by Roxy. "You don't need to work tomorrow, so please just rest." Fate felt very embarrassed for making Roxy worry. Fate turned and asked Greed, "Why is my hunger getting stronger? It used to be manageable, but not anymore. What's happening?" Greed replied seriously, "It has come to this. You must cast aside your humanity. Once the gluttony skill has tasted a soul, it will not stop constantly demanding more and pushing your status system to new heights. This is the classic path of a weak to strong protagonist. The more you consume, the stronger the craving becomes. You will continue to grow stronger, but it is also a curse you must bear, and if you cannot continue, you will die. If you don't learn to restrain yourself, then no one will care about you anymore, and they will destroy you even though it brings power to its user, but do not forget its inherent danger." Fate felt a bit intimidated after hearing that. If it's attacking my own body like this, then how is that any different from a monster Greed? Then announced some good news for you. Try looking in the mirror. Look at your eyes. You can now see the signs of reaching your limit with my eyes. I'll say it again. You have reached your limit. To satisfy his intense hunger, Fate went hunting alone at night and even ran into some guys who like to cause trouble. "I've never seen you before, have I? You plan on hunting at night with crappy gear like this? Hey everyone, don't help this idiot, okay?" They even interrogated him, asking what level Fate was in the status system. Fate was too exhausted, so he didn't want to say another word, and they thought his silence meant he was scared, which only emboldened them. "Don't you dare speak, you piece of trash!" At that moment, Fate couldn't hold back any longer, pulling down his hood and glaring at them with eyes full of bloodlust. Greed thought Fate's face was hilarious at that moment. The red-eyed boy panted and said that this feeling was really unpleasant. Fate basically didn't care about their nonsense. Seeing that they reeked like a herd of horses, the young man restrained himself from attacking them. Greed figured that was also why the hunger was intensifying. The red eyes were now the sign. It was a sign of the berserk gluttony skill, which craves souls. Its effect enhances basic abilities like scent detection of prey. The red eyes grant night vision and also paralyze those with a lower status in the status system, just like with that group of guys earlier. Fate now understood and remembered that when he fought the goblins before, they also stood frozen, without moving. Fate felt the gear he bought earlier was completely useless, showcasing his weak to strong journey. Greed warned, don't say that the next stage is coming. The berserk state of the gluttony skill, which craves souls, is only a temporary power. These goblins are not enough. You should hunt higher level types like hobgoblins. Fate decided his next target would be the hobgoblin forest. As soon as he arrived, he saw several hobgoblin fighters. One was a level 12 hobgoblin fighter, and another was a hobgoblin guard. Fate hid behind a branch. Then he decisively lunged forward, slicing the first one's head off. The other one panicked and fled for its life, but the young man did not spare it, piercing its head straight through with his sword. Fate felt more relieved afterward. However, that alone still was not enough for him. Fate wanted to keep consuming until he was completely satisfied. At this point, after devouring a full 45 of them, Fate felt full but was utterly exhausted. Greed told him, if you want, you should climb the tree behind you in case an enemy attacks. You should be careful. This also meant that until the hunger was satisfied, he had to keep attacking the surrounding magical beasts. In that state, Fate's mind would become unstable and he would be ready to attack anyone. If you hate it, you will have to hunt magical beasts frequently so the gluttony skill can absorb souls, Fate thought to himself. He couldn't just sit still anymore, he had to act now. Suddenly, the sound of massive footsteps echoed from the forest. A colossal creature appeared. Fate was bewildered. What is that? Through his appraisal eye, Fate saw that the entity was twice his size. After getting a clear look at it, he was completely shocked. This was the first time he had ever seen one. It was the king of a level 30 Goen with the self-regeneration skill. After checking Fate's status system, Greed noticed the power gap wasn't too large and it wasn't easy to encounter such a rare monster. Fate stealthily followed it, desperate to acquire the self-regeneration skill while the monster was loudly chewing on a tree branch. Greed felt that if Fate charged in now, he would be nothing more than a tasty snack for it. Greed advised his master to move as carefully and quietly as possible, and Fate tried to move without making a sound. Seeing a perfect opportunity, Greed told Fate to immediately rush in and finish it. Like the wind, the young man charged forward and slashed straight at its arm, making the Goen roar in pain. The first step was a success as one of the Goen's arms was severed. It entered a berserk state and Greed warned, "What are you standing there for? Fall back now." The maddened Goen furiously charged, attacking Fate head-on. The young man wasn't sure how to deal with the large branch, and Greed noted that if he just kept dodging, he would never be able to kill it. The weapon the monster held was just a worthless club, so Fate could easily counterattack. The young man advanced and knocked the club aside, creating the perfect opportunity to defeat the Goen. Fate moved in and sliced off its other arm, causing the monster to completely collapse. The young man's gluttony skill activated and new stats were added to his status system along with the auto-regeneration skill. Having won the battle, the young man felt overjoyed. Greed didn't forget to praise his master, saying his status was quite decent now. That means you can now break the first seal. The user's status will pour into me and everything will revert to the moment you and I first met. Through that process, I can take on a new form. Its activation depends on the user's specific mental state and requires an even higher status. This meant that every time Greed reset, he was drawing strength from Fate. The sword itself admitted to being a greedy weapon. Fate hesitated, wondering if it was mandatory to break the seal, but Greed argued that if Fate didn't break the seal, he could no longer wield him. So will you abandon me, or will you become stronger? You want to go from weak to strong, don't you? So do I. Now make your choice. Fate paused for a moment, but then made his decision instantly. There's no choice to make because you are my partner. Greed was confident that his new form would not disappoint his master. After Greed transformed, Fate was stunned for 5 seconds. This was his new power, the first seal released. First form magic scythe. In an instant, Fate suddenly found himself in a town where strangely only he and Lady Roxy were present. Fate told himself to stay calm as the young man wondered why he was here. After that night's battle, it had gotten quite late. Fate had been tailing the Barbados brothers because He suspected they were plotting something sinister. He then returned to his room as usual, living his double life as a gardener by day and a hunter by night. The days passed uneventfully like this. He turned and called out Roxy's name loudly, which startled the young lady and made her angry. Fate, realizing he was losing his composure, apologized and asked her, "What are you doing? Your clothes today are quite different from your usual attire." Roxy replied promptly, "It's an inspection. I want to disguise myself as a town girl and go see how the people are living. This is a secret inspection." Fate clenched his fist, showing his determination. "I understand, that's a wonderful idea. My apologies for the interruption. I'll return to my duties at once." Roxy, she tugged on the young man's sleeve and said, "I have an idea. I'll give you a secret mission. Escort me on my inspection today. My name for today is Roxy." After recalling the memories in his head ached. It turns out Roxy Sama is the first person I've ever escorted. This hurdle is truly too high. While he was standing there in a daze, he overheard two men behind him discussing some slum. "That orphanage, huh? It seems someone threw the ear of a goblin king into the orphanage as a donation in the middle of the night. It seems they're looking for that person's identity to thank them." They also talked about the goblin corpses scattered everywhere. A popular theory is that it was caused by a stray monster, but Fate knew the truth was tied to his secret gluttony skill. They say, "The holy knights will soon take action." Fate broke out in a cold sweat. This wasn't good. He needed to do something before he got caught. He passed by a shop and saw a skull mask for sale. It was a magical item that hinders others' perception. Fate thought he could use it. Seeing the young man fiddling in one spot, Roxy curiously ran over and gently asked, "Did you find something you like?" Fate's mind raced as he called her by the name Roxy. "Roxy, at this stall, I found a few very interesting things." The young lady's attention was caught by the gemstone stall. Although very beautiful, it only cost 1 silver coin, and to her that was very cheap. Fate stood behind her, sweating profusely. He felt so pathetic for working hard for 2 years, only to save 2 silver coins. This was a classic weak to strong journey for him. Suddenly the young man discovered something. Hidden in a box, it was a gemstone ore. He wanted to break it open and see what was inside this gemstone. The shopkeeper quoted a price of 10 coins and tempted the young man to try his luck. Fate glanced around, looking over at Roxy, and thought, right now looking at her, she seems like a normal girl, not a holy knight. Fate knew it was cheating, but he used his appraisal eye to choose a gift for Roxy. This was his unique status system skill at work. "This is a gift to express my gratitude." Roxy excitedly broke it open, then her face lit up with joy. "This is amazing. I'll treasure it. I'm so glad I came to town today." After leaving, the two of them encountered a lost child. Just when we decided on this inspection trip, we run into a problem. Roxy instinctively couldn't leave the child alone. She approached, using a face that couldn't be more intense, staring at him to comfort him. "It's okay, little brother. Leave it to me." After this action, the boy burst into tears even louder than before. Fate could only give an awkward smile and sigh. It wasn't surprising. That's what happens when children face the aura of a holy knight. With a gentle kindness, Fate approached the little boy and asked, "Why did you come here?" It turns out the boy was looking for his mother. Roxy watched wide-eyed. "It's so easy for children to like you, isn't it?" Fate thought the reason kids liked him was because he was childish like them. Roxy now felt like a complete outsider, so she insisted on following Fate and the little boy. They passed a few food stalls. The stomachs of the two brothers rumbled at the smell of grilled meat skewers, the kind Roxy stopped and treated all 3 of them to a hearty meal before they left. The sun had set and they still couldn't find the boy's mother. The scared little boy was constantly on the verge of tears, calling for his mommy. Since it was already dark, Fate decided to leave it for tomorrow. Roxy changed her demeanor, sat down, and gently told the boy, "You can stay at my place for tonight, okay? We'll look again tomorrow and I'll take care of you." The little boy seemed to be less scared and obeyed Roxy. Suddenly, just then, the boy's mother rushed over, calling out to her son, and seeing her, the boy burst into tears as Fate sighed in relief. They had even considered the worst-case scenario if the child's mother couldn't be found, so the mother and son bowed their heads repeatedly in thanks. Then they said their goodbyes and left. As an entire day passed, and Fate and Roxy still hadn't managed to investigate much at all. He suddenly froze, captivated by Roxy's beauty, his face turning completely red, thinking that if they returned now, the head maid would surely scold them until they were blue in the face. Roxy shyly and timidly asked, "Will you face the scolding with me? I believe in sharing the good times and the bad," and Fate had no reason to refuse at all. Now they would head back, and Fate even wished that happy days like this would stretch on forever. From that day forward, whenever Fate appeared and was seen by others, he was always in a state of wearing a demonic mask. It looked terrifying, but in reality he intentionally appeared that way so no one would recognize him as the man on a weak-to-strong journey. Fate had heard that an investigation and purge of monsters was underway, so he had to act with extreme caution to avoid being discovered. Yet here he was sitting comfortably in a carriage with Roxy. Seeing his dazed and blank expression, the young lady asked, "Could it be that you don't enjoy traveling with me?" Fate flusteredly replied with feigned excitement, "Not at all, I was actually looking forward to it very much." His expression looked so insincere. Roxy was a bit suspicious, so Fate stammered again, "Getting to learn about the people's harvest is truly a joy." It really is. This young man could always bring up the topic of food, which made sense for someone with the gluttony skill. In any case, traveling with him like this made Roxy, feel very happy. She hoped to see the lands of the Hart family improve and grow prosperous through the generations. However, becoming wealthy too quickly also seemed to bring many drawbacks, and she had heard that recently. In this, a species known as kobolds had appeared and they were destroying most of the farmers' crops. In order to resolve this issue, she had to make a trip each year to assess the situation. Fate asked with concern, "Are you all right, my lady?" Roxy was confident that since she was a holy knight, this matter was no big deal for her at all, although he kept praising how wonderful Roxy was. And Fate suddenly took an interest in the monster called a kobold. It was a monster that often appeared in German folklore. They were often described as having a human body and a dog's head. Lately, Fate had only been eating goblins, so he was thinking about finding other types of food. As his stomach rumbled again, even though he had just finished eating, Roxy worried he would be embarrassed and just praised Fate. "You certainly have a healthy appetite, don't you?" They were now approaching the house, and as soon as Roxy arrived, her mother was already there to greet her. Roxy rushed over, saying, "Mother, you don't need to come all this way to greet me." At a glance, one could see the woman was very frail, even needing a servant to support her arm just to walk. "It's all right, I'm feeling much better today." Her mother then began to wonder about the young man over there who was Fate. The young lady eagerly introduced him. "This is the servant I just hired because I wanted to introduce him to you, mother. I brought him here." The young man bowed his head repeatedly and introduced himself, and the mother also warmly introduced herself as Aisha Hart. Fate felt that this woman was very kind. Taking the opportunity, Aisha asked Fate, "What do you think of Roxy?" Fate froze, not understanding why she would ask such a thing. Roxy panicked, her face flushing bright red. "Mother, why would you suddenly ask something like that?" Aisha replied. "I just wanted to ask what he thinks of a master like you." Fate was taken aback, wondering if this was some kind of test for his status system evaluation. "I was startled, so that was her intention. I had a feeling, even though she only asked what I thought of her master. But I still had some sort of feeling." The young man replied with the utmost respect, "Lady A. Rosie is the one who has helped me so much during this time. If I can, I hope to dedicate my entire life to her." He was laying it on so thick that Rosie could only poke her fingers together shyly. Afterwards, the young lady covered her face and asked to go to her room to rest for a bit. Fate even thought he had said something wrong to cause her reaction. AA just smiled and replied, "It must be because of the long journey earlier. The girl is probably tired from the long road. Besides, I wonder if she has told you about our family's current situation." Within the royal court, yet after her father passed away, suddenly the family's duties have become more and more numerous, and more difficult to the point of being almost impossible to complete. Seeing her worried expression, Fate quickly reassured her. "My lady, I said do not worry, for Rosie is the most wonderful holy knight in this world. She is deeply trusted by both the people and the royal family." Hearing these words, Ah felt more at ease about her daughter. To think a girl who was such a crybaby when she was little has now become a brave holy knight. Fate was taken aback, unable to imagine a crybaby Rosie. AA began to describe, and that she would burst into tears just from seeing a tiny little insect. The young man seemed amused, so Aya also. I'd planned to tell him more, but she was suddenly struck by a dizzy spell and a headache. A servant advised her to go inside and rest instead of just standing out here. AA promised she would tell Fate more the next time they had a chance to meet. Seeing it was still quite early, the young man wanted to take a walk around. Tomorrow would be the day Fate and Rosie would help with the harvest. "Oh, sure, work here." Greed asked if he had any harvesting experience, yet warning that if he failed it would be quite embarrassing. After the sword finished speaking, the young man decided to toss it aside for a moment and ran over to a farmer to strike up a conversation. He insisted on helping the people with the harvest. He cut and carried grapes with nimble speed. Seeing the young man working so hard, the farmers even gave him a cup of freshly squeezed grape juice. An old man sitting beside him shared that the previous kings had worked tirelessly, shant on the issue of land reclamation, which is why we farmers can now grow such delicious grapes. Fate took the opportunity to ask about the recent rumors about monsters destroying the crops. The farmer scratched his head and replied, those things. Many people have witnessed them coming from the northern valley over there. We are very concerned because every year Lady Rosie comes here to help us solve this problem. Furthermore, the previous head of the family just passed away, so we are currently very worried. Fate immediately replied, please do not worry, because Lady Rosie is a very kind and powerful holy knight. Everything will be resolved just fine. I am absolutely certain of it. Hearing these words, the farmer felt more at ease. As expected of an attendant from the Hart family, you speak so well. Here, have some more to drink. Fate's day felt incredibly fulfilling. On his way back, the young man saw a woman carrying a massive broadsword. She had long white hair, tan skin, and a white tattoo. Do people of this race even exist in this country? As soon as she saw Fate, she stopped and said, hey, you there. Fate looked directly into her eyes. They were a pair of red eyes strikingly similar to his own when the OP gluttony skill sent him into a berserk hunger. However, when he tried to use his appraisal eye through his status system, he couldn't see a thing. The girl asked again, hey, are you listening to me? Then sighing, she says it is probably still too early while the young man has no clue what the heck is going on. She is here to hunt the kobolds, but will leave just one for Fate. As Fate ponders, Roxy suddenly arrives. I finally found you. What is wrong? You look scared. Roxy looks at the other girl and says that is a member of the Gazia tribe. Isn't she long ago in a faraway land? There was a great continent called Gazia, where the people had a custom of raising demons for many generations, but I heard that tribe was almost completely wiped out. I never expected to meet someone here with such pure Gazia blood like her. Roxy curiously asks if she is an acquaintance of Fate's, but the young man vehemently denies it. He then asks why Roxy is here. The girl replies, I came to call you back, dinner is all ready. As they walk, he keeps thinking about the Gazia girl and asks Greed, hey Greed, that girl's eyes looked a lot like mine. Do you know anything about this? It replies, she said you would meet again, didn't she? Until then, you should just forget about it. It seems even Greed does not know the answer, suggesting that Fate should worry about the kobolds in the meantime. It is better to go hunting before he reaches his limit. Greed feels something present in Fate's mind. It can even sense it from his pulse and then advises him to eat more. In fact, there was no need to wait for it to say that, as Fate had intended to do so from the start. He stands on a cliff, observing and looking down. There are about 50 small kobolds around here and 4 assault kobolds. However, the most concerning one is the Bringer of Tragedy, a unique assault kobold level 50. This last one is truly dangerous, a powerful monster with a special name. It is a unique. Hearing this, Fate feels a bit intimidated. Immediately after, Greed panics, this is bad, there are too many monsters for the young holy knights, which means if you cannot stop them here, the entire land within the territory will be destroyed. With his current stats, Fate realizes his present self definitely cannot win against this threat to his status system. But if he does nothing now, the territory, everyone, and even Roxy will die. Fate cannot just stand by and watch such a tragedy unfold. Greed anxiously asks if he has a plan. Fate just smiles lightly and replies, it is simple, fight and eat them all. While the kobolds are not paying attention, the young man hides in the dark to attack them. The leader orders all the kobolds to advance into the forest, searching frantically. Taking advantage of a horde of kobolds being here, Fate attacks them all at once, making every last one of them cough up blood. The young man, positioned in the bushes, then dashes out like an arrow with incredible speed, closing in on the assault kobold and finishing it off. Fate has activated his gluttony skill. All the stats added to his status system increase, and the new skills he gains are strength boost and agility boost. For now, Fate's ambush has succeeded. Just as expected from the black bow, the young man's actions are flawless. Greed thinks that is only natural for a demon pursuer. According to the current count, there are 25 small kobolds left, and 2 assault kobolds plus 1 unique. Even though an ambush will not be as effective anymore, it does not change anything. Fate believes that with his gluttony skill, the more he eats, the stronger he becomes, a perfect example of a weak to strong narrative. Therefore, the young man's battle plan is very simple. Avoid the unique and kill the others one by one. Right now, if he kills 2 more, One more attack and your status system will show stats surpassing the unique monster in front of you. Fate, this is the unique one, and its speed was so fast. In an instant, a goblin was right in front of the young man and started its arrogant display. Fate held on tight, resisting, and plunged his sword straight into its mouth, finishing it off in an instant. Just like that, the young man activated his gluttony skill, and now his skill set was quite extensive. In other words, he could now confidently face the unique monster head-on. The gigantic frenzied beast charged forward and rammed him, sending Fate flying. That was the piercing combat art from the martial arts skill. If he were hit by it, Fate would be done for. Greed believed that Fate could finish it in just one blow by using a secret technique. Especially when used with his current status system, it would destroy everything, requiring only a sacrifice of 10% of his current stats. At that, Fate smiled. "Ah, you are so greedy, but now take it." Greed began to activate the super-level V-Pro bombardment skill. After a cloud of billowing smoke, Fate was left speechless by Greed's destruction. "Isn't this a bit overkill?" Greed confidently declared. "It's no problem at all. We've slaughtered the entire goblin horde. In this case, slaughter is more accurate than eliminate." Fate activated the gluttony skill. Stats began to pour into his status system rapidly. The martial arts skill was added, and Fate felt an overwhelming, maddening change. "What is this? Is this surging feeling the gluttony skill?" Greed reminded him. "Master, you must learn more restraint or you'll become just like when you're lost to the gluttony skill. The important thing is to try to endure and restrain it." The young man's current state was so frenzied that he was on the verge of losing control. The next day, Roxy went on patrol and arrived at the scene. Through observation, she saw that the goblins had been shot to death and even slashed to death. Perhaps what killed them was a magic bow, and it seemed there was no life left here at all. She was extremely curious, wondering who could have done this. The moment Roxy returned home, Fate ran out to greet her with great enthusiasm, exclaiming, "Welcome back, my lady." Roxy even smiled and teased Fate. "You slept all day and only just woke up when I tried to wake you this morning, but you were sleeping too soundly." Fate was so exhausted he didn't wake up until noon. The young man explained that yesterday's fatigue suddenly hit him. Last night, after suppressing the violent backlash from the gluttony skill, he had somehow made it back to his room, but because he was so exhausted he passed out. Deciding not to explain further, the young man gave a wry smile and asked, "So how was your hunt, my lady? Weren't you scheduled to return tomorrow morning? Did something happen?" Roxy suddenly looked downcast. "It's because we found signs of a battle and many goblin corpses, but we couldn't find any survivors. And on top of that, a beautiful area of land was completely destroyed, leaving nothing behind." Seeing Roxy sadly weeping, the young man could only think to himself, "Everyone in the domain, please forgive me." Fate broke out in a sweat and tentatively asked, "So have you found the culprit yet?" She began to speculate. "I think the culprit is that Galleon girl. I've heard that Galleons have combat abilities that far surpass even the Holy Knights, but that's just speculation, of course." I needed to say something to calm everyone down. Fate let out a sigh of relief, silently thanking the Galleon girl. Roxy figured that everyone would wait for 2 days, and if nothing else happened, they could be certain the area was safe. Now it was time for Fate to return to the capital. After he finished packing, Roxy's mother came out wishing to speak with him. "You are returning. In the royal capital, that girl Rosie. Nothing can hold her here for long. I'm truly worried something will happen to her," AA said while coughing. Cough, cough. This woman's health was clearly getting worse by the day. She believed she wouldn't live much longer and her body was visibly weakening. She then confided in Fate, "Her eyes are always on you whenever she's by your side. So please be her pillar of support." Hearing this, Fate felt a pang of sadness, a reminder of his weak to strong journey from being just a lowly servant. The mother continued, "Your position in the status system doesn't matter. I don't need you to have some special power like a holy knight. The most important thing is what's in your heart, that you want to be by her side." Upon hearing this, Fate's face turned completely red. He began to ponder the meaning of her words about the heart. According to AA, she was just an ordinary person, yet she was still able to be a pillar for her husband even though he was a holy knight. The lady hoped that Fate could do the same. As they were deep in conversation, Rosie peeked from behind a door, watching them intently. "Fate, are you having a secret talk with my mother?" The girl's sudden appearance made Fate jump. Seeing the tense expression on her daughter's face, AA instantly understood the situation. It seemed the little one was even getting jealous of her own mother. Rosie, flustered, urged Fate to leave right away. AA wanted to hear Fate's answer during their next meeting. Sitting in the carriage, the young man was still dazed and lost in thought. Regardless, he wanted to prepare for his own future. On a normal day, Fate was busy trimming branches when he saw Rosie walking away from the mansion. Normally, she would have quickly changed out of her attire, but where was she going now in a full suit of armor? Rosie approached her father's grave and knelt down solemnly. Her behavior was so unusual that it made Fate extremely curious. She'll never answer me even if I ask, but she's acting very different from her usual self. What could have happened to her back at the mansion? It had been a very long time since Fate returned to his usual tavern, so long that the owner thought he was long dead. Now he had suddenly become a servant for a noble family. The tavern owner sighed in relief and shared some gossip. The head of the Hart family is going to be replaced. Hearing this, Fate was startled and asked for more details. It seems the head of the Hart family will be chosen for the Gallia Continent expedition. Fate was completely shocked. Didn't the previous count die on that very same mission? The owner explained that the master of the Hart family always sided with the common folk, so the other holy knights saw him as a thorn in their side. Fate now understood why Rosie was acting so differently. It was because they were planning to send Rosie to the Gallia continent and the Deadly Continent. Rumor had it that the master of the Burix family was among those nominated, and all the other holy knights were in agreement. It seemed the decision had been made long ago. Fate began to think about their secretive dealings. He grew furious, thinking, those absolute scoundrels. At that moment, two men were drinking and gossiping behind him. Looks like Hado-sama, the master of the Burix family, was chosen for the Mukuro expedition. He's finally decided to make his move, huh? He only made his move late because of some minor difficulties. Now we can rest easy. Congratulations to Hado-sama. Hearing this, Fate's expression grew dark. That bastard is on his way. I can't change the decision, and I have no power to stop Rosie-sama from going. But to treat people like insects and harm others, those scoundrels are absolutely unforgivable. Fate, his gluttony skill, stirring with rage, sought them out and appeared. Where they were running rampant, killing one of their underlings. This action drove them mad right at the moment Hado-sama arrived. While he was screaming for Fate to pay the price, Fate had already removed his mask. The purpose this time was to settle things once and for all. The moment he saw the true face of the skull mask, he was shocked. How could a weakling like you possess such power? Fate, his heart heavy with hatred, screamed, "Answer me, you dog. I'll start with you now. Chast until this is all over." Chast still couldn't escape his dumbfounded state, looking like a complete fool. He remembered Chast's cowardly, trembling, and horrified expression when he fought alongside Greed. He couldn't believe Fate now had such terrifying power. The one he had always considered trash had obtained so much strength, a true weak to strong transformation. Of course, Fate had no intention of explaining anything to him. His face was full of defiance, challenging Chast, who could do nothing but boast and threaten that Fate wouldn't be able to escape after this, adding that he was the second son of the Vlaric family. A holy knight. Fate's expression was like, "You're about to die and you're still flexing holy knight my ass." He challenged Chast to show him the power of a holy knight he was so proud of. Checking the monk status system, as a holy knight, he was indeed quite strong. However, the item he held was a holy sword. It increased the damage dealt when using special weapons, allowing the user to unleash skills with immense power. Fate also wanted to motivate Greed a little, asking if he was as confident he could handle that holy sword. Hitting a nerve, the prideful Greed confidently asserted, "There's no way I would ever lose to that artificial holy sword." After hearing that, Fate felt somewhat reassured and charged forward to fight. Seeing Fate rush in, Chast was immediately contemptuous. Charging straight in like that was exactly what he expected. From a foolish slave, he shouted, "Vanish with this light of purgation, Grand Cross." He had just raised his sword. But before he could do a damn thing, Fate was already playing hide-and-seek behind him. The idiot Chast turned around, not understanding what was happening, his face a canvas of question marks. Looking back at his sword, he saw Fate had already sliced it in two at some point. Our protagonist took the opportunity to remind him to know his place and train his own skills more. After his artificial holy sword was destroyed, Chast's only thought was to escape. In this state, he didn't look like a holy knight at all. Fate also wanted to show him what a real festival of pain was. Now it's time for your favorite lesson. A bad dog needs to be punished. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a massive explosion that seemed to shatter the entire forest. Just hearing it was enough to wonder if that guy Chast was even still in one piece. Then Fate grabbed his neck tightly, channeling all his resentment, causing him to only beg, "Stop, please, stop." Fate wanted him to pay for all the cruel things he had done, from his insulting words to the heartless moment he kidnapped and tortured a young girl, and even for treating others as less than insects. But the biggest reason was that because of him, Roxy was sent to the land of the dead. The more Fate thought about this resentment, the tighter his grip became. Chast's pleas grew fainter. Fate mercilessly threw him and fired 3 shots. Take 30% of his stats. This was going to be another grand feast for the Yench gluttony skill. The arrows shot straight into Chast, injuring him so severely that he was now unable to move. He asked Fate if he was doing all of this just for revenge for Roxy, to which Fate then, "I recall the girl at the palace saying that if her life could save even one person in the kingdom, she would be happy to depart. I'm certain she would do so because that's the kind of person she is. She would keep all her worries to herself and fulfill her duties as a holy knight for the people." Fate hesitates no longer. He immediately makes the man taste the consequences reserved for scum like him. His sword strikes decisively. This is revenge. Revenge for Fate himself, not just for Roxy. Fate activates his gluttony skill. Its second form has been revealed to be a scythe form. The blade of the cursed tool can now slice through anything. Fate wants to test it right now, but greed advises him to save it for a more suitable occasion. Besides, our young man must return as soon as possible. Fate has already shown mercy and used up a fair amount of his stats from his status system, and Greed is incredibly worried, wondering if his master is truly okay with that. Fate feels a bit angry just thinking about the enemy's stats flooding into him. An important thing is that he has now obtained the Holy Sword skill, which means Fate now holds the title of a Holy Knight, but there's no way the Holy Order would ever accept someone like him. The next day is when Roxy is set to depart for the land of the dead. Everyone assumes she will not be able to return, and the only thing a servant can do is see her off. But for a warrior, it's a different story. Fate cannot reveal his identity now, but he wants to support Roxy from the shadows, even though he knows it's hard to say goodbye to those who have cared for him. In order to survive and return together, Fate still decides to go to Galia in the south. He also wants to protect her with his own power. After some travel, Fate can now see the southern transport hub of the capital, a place where all goods from the southern region converge, the southern city of Tetra. After 5 years, Fate returns here and feels that nothing has changed at all. He had stopped here before on his way to the capital when he was kicked out of his village. The first thing Fate does is head to a tavern for some food and information, but before he can even enter, a young man is thrown out like trash. The tavern owner shouts that no one would take on a subjugation request for such a paltry sum of money. The young man wails pitifully, begging for help and bowing his head repeatedly. The moment he looks up, he recognizes Fate. This man's name is Seto. 5 years has changed everything, showcasing Fate's incredible journey from weak to strong. Since childhood, Fate was ostracized and all he ever received was scorn. Now the very person who personally drove him away must kneel and beg for his forgiveness. Fate, please lend me your strength to protect the village. I'll do anything. Seto is the village chief's son, the very person who exiled Fate. Yet in this desperate situation, even though he believes Fate is a useless and worthless person, he still begs for help. This proves the village has reached a dead end. Fate thinks that although Seto is very selfish, he still makes the offer. My gluttony skill needs to devour souls anyway, right? Fine then, just leave the monster extermination to me. Seeing just a glimmer of hope makes Seto's eyes light up. However, there is still a hint of hesitation in his gaze, so Fate asks if he still has doubts. Seto stammers, "Not at all, I'm asking for your help. But if you still hate everyone in the village, please don't do anything too drastic." Fate replies bluntly, It would be a lie to say I don't hate it. But this is where my father rests in peace after all. So Fate originally just intended to come here to visit the grave, not to use his gluttony skill. The moment Seto brought Fate, it was just like the old days. Fate was looked down upon no different than a dog. The moment he appeared, they even started making hostile remarks, saying that Seto brought back a piece of trash who had already been exiled to the village. What good is that? Are you trying to bring him back for revenge? Planning to take the money and run? I told you I was bringing a warrior. How could this runt possibly slay a monster? If it were me, I would have just left this pathetic crowd and gone home already. But Fate still endured it standing there. Seto tried his best to explain that Fate is very strong. I saw him kill a monster on the way to the village. The old village chief held his face in helplessness. He was extremely disappointed in his son Seto. It would have been one thing if he couldn't bring any warrior at all, but instead, he took a desperate gamble and brought back a ragged person like Fate. He stood up to apologize to everyone, saying that his son was still too young to bear such responsibility. Therefore, he would personally go find help tomorrow. The villagers murmured anxiously, fearing the monster would appear that very night. The village chief then turned towards Fate, giving him a look of utter contempt, and declared they would use Fate as bait to buy time. Fate's patience had reached its limit. His hand clenched tightly as he tried to endure the humiliation. Afraid that Fate would leave, Sato came over to calm him down, begging him to just bear with it. No matter what, he couldn't convince the villagers, so he invited Fate to rest at his home for the night. Fate could only let out a sigh and agree to put up with it. Still, he couldn't understand this ironic situation. He had originally only planned to visit his family's grave and take care of the monsters along the way, but he never expected to be treated this way. Then there was Greed, who asked a question that couldn't have been more scathing. Since when did you become the bait? In front of Fate, now was a small child whose mother had been attacked by another monster. Seto once again bowed his head and apologized to Fate for what happened earlier. In any case, this village was still as poor as ever, both spiritually and physically. In the past, Sato only knew how to blindly obey his father. At that time, he thought that was the right thing to do. Sato confided that since this child was born, he had done a lot of thinking and had begun to change. It seemed all the changes were thanks to the little girl. Fate smiled as he now understood everything. He asked Sato and wanted to hear the details about the monsters. According to Sato, they have sharp claws and horns on their heads. They also have wings and can fly freely in the sky. According to the information, there wasn't just one of them. Hearing this, Greed guessed that they must be gargoyles. They are an intelligent species. At first, they will launch a small attack to gauge the number of people, then wait for the right moment to bring their swarm and attack again. Their opportunity is at night, especially on the darkest and quietest nights, when the clouds cover the sky or when there is no moon. Based on this information, tonight is the most likely time. Fate couldn't hesitate any longer. He immediately took action, telling Sato not to leave the house. The moment he stepped outside, he saw thousands of gargoyles. A quick check of their status system showed they were level 27 and had the flame bullet skill. This was a dangerous ability. Fate stood there stunned in thought, causing Greed to remind him not to just space out like that and to use his scythe. As soon as Fate moved, he understood the problem. It turned out the scythe could cut through the very phenomenon itself, and it could even reflect it back. It's absolutely effective in magical combat. Even if he slashed a flame bullet, the fire that spread to other places wouldn't vanish. This weak-to-strong hero now understood them to some extent. His next target, Greed's home base, argued that the timing wasn't right for a frontal assault and advised its master that it would be best to lure them out. By luring them with fire, Fate grew excited because this was the perfect opportunity. He wanted to test his new strength. The young man decisively charged forward. He hurled his axe towards the demonic beasts, wiping them out in a single clean sweep. The minions were all gone now, however there was still one left. It was a leader monster, a goblin Neo level 47. Its skills were flame bullet and fire resistance. Fate faced it, wondering what to do next. The leader's main target was Fate. It charged straight towards him in what looked like a suicidal attack. A desperate attack since it knew it had fire resistance. Greed had eliminated them from a distance before, but it was uncertain if it would be effective up close. Fate waited for it to approach, then lunged forward and sliced it in half. Just like that, it was utterly destroyed and torn to pieces. As expected, against the power of the Black Scythe, it stood no chance. Fate activated his gluttony skill, a core part of his weak-to-strong transformation. Stamina, strength, mana, spirit, and dexterity were continuously added to his status. It seemed the gluttony skill was completely satisfied with its meal, updating his status system. Fate looked over the ruined village and sighed. Even for a place like this, he still felt a sense of loneliness now that it was gone. He found his father's grave and somehow managed to clean it all up. This was a moment of reunion for him with both his mother and father. He remembered his father, who always had a smile on his face. When his mother passed away, his father raised him all on his own. Yet despite everything, his father's smile never faded. And now he finally understood, no matter how difficult things get, you have to keep smiling. His father had told him that no matter the hardship, he should always remain optimistic because one day happiness would find him. Perhaps his father's smiles during those years were silent wishes for his son's happiness. For the past 5 years, Fate had endured so much. He suffered great hardships and countless disappointments, but now he could finally tell his father that he was okay. Sato was waiting for Fate outside. As soon as Fate emerged, Sato looked worried, asking if it was really okay for Fate to leave the village. The village chief was gone and the village was destroyed. With the current number of survivors, rebuilding the village was impossible. Sato wanted to head to the town to find work for his daughter. Sato clenched his fists and asked fate to hit him. He was looking for trouble when there was none to be had. He bowed his head sincerely, saying he knew this alone couldn't satisfy fate, but his mind was made up. Greed chimed in with glee. Greed enthusiastically urged fate to hit him, saying it was a matter of a man's honor. Go on, hit him. Fate worried that at full power he would kill Sato. The young man glanced at Sato one more time, then clutched his head, thinking that if he held back a little it would probably be fine. He then told Sato to clench his teeth. Fate gently punched Sato straight in the face, causing his nose to gush blood like a geyser. Fate looked on with a puzzled expression, clearly confused because he was sure he had held back, yet it still seemed to be too much. After punching the man, he had the nerve to ask if he was okay. Sato looked up, his face swollen, and cried out in pain. Fate then offered a hand to help him up. Remember to take good care of your daughter, he said. After that intimate exchange, Sato departed. Fate sat in the carriage, yawning over and over. The driver asked Fate, "Are you really strong?" Fate calmly replied, "I think I'm strong. At least stronger than a rookie holy knight." Hearing this, the old driver burst out laughing, thinking Fate was just talking big. "Whatever you say, kid, but in the next city we're heading to, you'd best stop spouting words like that even as a joke. The next city is the territory of a holy knight, and if he were to hear that kind of talk, both of us would be executed for treason." Greed mockingly suggested this was a perfect chance for Fate to test his combat abilities and see how far his weak-to-strong journey had come. He warned him not to be reckless, because doing so would get them chased all over town by soldiers. Seeing that Fate didn't answer, the old driver repeated once more that he needed to be extremely careful, even begging him. As Fate was walking, he was blocked by a group of soldiers. "Hey you guys, so sorry but this road is closed. If you don't want to die, leave your luggage behind. And get lost, haha." It was Fate's fault for being so careless, as he just stood there dumbfounded while the cowardly old driver could only cling tightly to him. "I'm so scared I could die." "Hey kid, you're strong, right? Do something." Fate grabbed the man's head and told him to calm down. How the hell was he supposed to fight with him clinging to his head like this? The moment they saw Fate, they looked down on him even more. "What can a little brat like you possibly do? Are you trying to piss me off or something?" Before he could do anything, from the sky, a girl swooped down and slammed her weapon into the ground. The force sent the group flying. As soon as she saw Fate, she said, "I finally found you." This girl was the red-eyed galleon girl Fate had met the other day. The young lady expressed her wish to hitch a ride. The driver, overjoyed to be saved, enthusiastically invited her to join them. She wanted to travel with Fate because she needed his help to repay a debt. Fate's face at that moment was the very picture of confusion. He asked her, "What exactly do you want me to do, huh?" Only to be blatantly ignored. She even changed the subject and asked for his name. As soon as he introduced himself, the girl replied, "I remember now. Fate of the gluttony skill, right?" Hearing this, the young man was completely shocked, wondering how she knew so much about him. The girl stepped closer to Fate and introduced herself. "My name is Mine of Wrath." Even with such a specific introduction, Fate still couldn't understand what of wrath meant. They finally arrived at their destination. In front of Fate was a white wall that radiated an oppressive aura, along with a suffocating street filled with rejection. Just as expected from a town ruled by a holy knight, Fate was dead tired, and now he had to carry Mine because she was sound asleep and couldn't be woken up. Fate felt a headache coming on from all the whispering and murmuring from the crowd. To treat someone who could smash boulders, Mine of Wrath like a little sister, Fate couldn't understand why he had to do this thankless job. Greed advised Fate not to bother carrying her because this kid is terrible at waking up. If you wake her up forcefully, this whole town will be destroyed by her wrath. With this level of knowledge, it seemed Greed already knew her. The fact that she's still alive is a testament to her resilience. Fate wondered what had happened between Greed and Mine, but when he asked, Greed just kept denying it, pretending not to know. Even though his mind-reading skill didn't work on Mine, he could read her weapon. Greed continued to mumble that only Fate could awaken Mine and that her weapon was ultimately classified as one of the mortal sin weapons. Mortal sin weapon is the general term for weapons that possess special abilities just like Greed. This also meant that her stone-shattering power was one of its abilities. In fact, it was just one of its many abilities, as it could freely change its own weight to increase the power of its strikes. Fate sighed in exasperation, not expecting to be indebted to someone like her. Right now, the young man could only see trouble waiting for him. As he was swaggering along carrying Mine, he was stopped by some soldiers. They thought Fate was a tourist who was extremely tired, so he used the excuse that he was looking for a place to stay. Nearby, they then sternly apologized, but informed him that the area beyond this point was for residents only. The inns for tourists are in the opposite direction, so you should go find one there. Fate was a little curious about the symbol on their bodies. The square shape with a slash is the symbol of a resident, and it depends on the skills of its possessor. This town has a strict status system that divides roles. Holy knights, warriors, and serfs all have different symbols. Every resident has that mark on their neck because that is the law of this region. As soon as they finished speaking, the two men became aggressive and demanded that Fate leave immediately, otherwise they would throw him in jail. At this point, Fate knew he could only back down and leave. The restrictions on tourists and the class stratification with holy knights showed the town's officials were indeed strict. They had such a narrow-minded way of thinking that staying here any longer would be suffocating. In front of Fate now was a almost massive colossal building. Fate accidentally bumped into the doorframe, causing it to make a very loud noise. Just then a troop of warriors emerged. It was already dark and it seemed they were just now starting their hunt. Greed felt that it seemed they either had a night vision skill, just like the one Fate possessed, or they had a magic tool with a similar ability. Fate watched the crowd. As they moved together, he sighed. Greed thought he was jealous that they had comrades, but Fate waved his hand, insisting there was no way. Adieu. He would be so foolishly jealous. He was simply using them as a tactical reference. This place was so large. Fauna that Fate was truly overwhelmed, and upon entering, he was greeted by an incredibly enthusiastic staff member. According to the employee, their establishment had 5 floors with about 500 rooms on each, and it even contained a few shops inside. They confidently asserted that a customer couldn't find a better place to stay in this town. Fate was a little curious, so he immediately asked, "By the way, I'd like to know where that group from earlier went." After hearing this question, the employee immediately guessed Fate was a warrior. He then smiled warmly and replied, "In that case, I recommend that you go hunt sandmen in the eastern desert." Hearing this recommendation, Fate wasted no time and appeared there instantly. The young man was now surrounded by nothing but sand. Just sand. The main cause of this desert's expansion is the Sandman, and it has become a serious problem for the residents of this town. Greed suddenly told Fate, "You're really brave, you know. I'm talking about mine because that girl refused to wake up." So Fate resorted to drawing a cat face on her with a pen. Not only that, but he laughed as if he'd won the lottery. Fate even found his own actions hard to understand. Afterward, he pulled out his mask. He still wanted to operate under the identity of a monster. The reason Fate did this was his fear that someone would reveal his identity to Roxy-sama. From now on, Fate's new identity is the warrior named Mukuro. Greed was startled. He hastily reminded Fate that his berserk state had already been activated. Fate was yielding to the gluttony skill far too easily. It seemed the skill had already finished consuming everything, and now as part of his weak-to-strong journey, the young man needed to find a way to confront it. He had to resist it. If not, the day he would be completely devoured by that skill was not far off. Greed told Fate that first he must maintain a semi-berserk state. The young man didn't know how to do that at all, so Greed conveniently showed him a few basic exercises. Performing it was incredibly easy. He told Fate to look down into the chasm where there was a level 30 Sandman. Spirit reinforcement skill. Fate would have to take them down one by one, resting a bit before hunting the next. Previously, the receptionist had revealed to him, show Fate the monster's weak point inside their bodies was a core. Fate used a fire bullet attacking straight towards the Sunman. However, the slimy creature dodged Fate's attack. Seeing this, Greed seemed disappointed, taunting him. "Did the aching muscles from your gluttony skill make you miss?" Fate cursed and replied, "I did not want to. It is because this is the first time I have ever cast magic." Greed felt the situation was a bit hopeless, so he decided to step in and help, shaking violently, and told Fate, "Just practice standing like you normally do, but before you shoot the magic arrow, chant for a magic bullet." Fate listened. A superpowered flame erupted. This flame hit the Sunman and burned it fiercely. Now the young man finally understood that his magic power had been infused into the arrow. It was truly an incredibly impressive shot. Greed, in his capacity as a high-talking weapon, boasted, "Oh, who do you think I am?" Fate's gluttony skill activated, causing his stats in the status system to rise. The spirit enhancement skill was added. Greed felt an SOS-level urgency and told Fate to calm down and rest for a bit. After defeating one rest before finding the next, Fate needed to restrain his berserk gluttony mode and maintain the semi-berserk gluttony mode. Although this was a harsh plan, Fate could only trust in his greed and get used to this hunger. Tonight would be a very long night for Fate. In the middle of the vast desert, the young man lit a fire and lay down beside it to rest. Several hours passed. Even though it was his first time, Fate did very well. This whole ordeal was a testament to his weak to strong journey. He drank one drop at a time. Fate longed to return to the city before dawn because he might go insane if he overindulged. Greed again. Sen chimed in, "That will happen if you are consumed by the gluttony skill." Fate saw it as the next part of his training. The young man decided to put on his mask stand up, and from now on he would quickly satiate his gluttony. Through his senses. Fate located 3 sunmen to the north. The young man could now distinguish them by scent. This was the result of his training. Fate needed about 30 more, so he had to finish as quickly as possible. Suddenly he sensed something and immediately turned around, then dashed off. Greed was like, "I do not get it. What the heck is this? You are..." Going in the opposite direction of the sunmen. Fate was currently moving towards the group of warriors he met today. He felt like they were struggling, and their opponent was a unique magical beast which just so happened to be the main course. In that Fate was looking for, Fate used all his speed to run in that direction. The young man's goal was not to save them but to satisfy his own insatiable hunger right now. After completing his semi-berserk gluttony training, all that remained. She was the main course. The warrior party was currently struggling immensely, seemingly unable to resist. Someone had collapsed with paralyzed legs. The others felt that if things continued like this, they would not get anywhere. So they yelled to each other to forget everything and just run, or else they would be done for. The stubborn captain still wanted his comrades to recklessly charge forward. The monster's level was currently too high for the warriors. The shield was about to break, and it was getting more and more aggressive. In their moment of complete helplessness, a surge of power shot straight into the space between that magical beast and the party of warriors. They had absolutely no idea what was happening. Fate's appearance at this moment was truly heroic. The young man stood proudly, and they guessed he must be a warrior. Fate, wearing a mask, turned to declare, "This mana beast is mine." The captain thought that Fate alone stood no chance against the creature. Fate obviously didn't care what they said and just charged straight for his target, then warned them again. "I warned you. If you get caught in this battle, don't blame me." No one could stop Fate now. Greed hurriedly told Fate that if he wanted to fight in close combat, he should switch to the black sword, but he replied bluntly, "You don't need to remind me. In the last battle, I avoided direct confrontation with the monster lord and only attacked with long-range fireballs, so now I must improve my melee skills on this weak to strong journey." The mana beast's identity was the one that blankets the desert region. Its skill was dust magic. Greed thought it was very suitable for Fate's training right now, but still warned him not to underestimate it just because it was slow. Fate rushed forward at full speed and slashed the mana beast's arm, severing the entire limb. Giant boulders from the mana beast's body came crashing down. Greed told his master to fall back as far as possible. Somehow Fate was unlucky enough to get hit. A boulder struck him straight in the chest, and only then did he realize the mana beast's body itself was a weapon. In fact, its true body was the round core, not the outer shell. That was also why Greed had told him not to be careless. Fate was finding this training battle more and more exhilarating. Right now, Fate needed to try to dodge every attack and aim straight for the core. What it was emitting now was sand magic. Fate stood his ground, trying to maintain his balance. And luckily, this was a small matter for him. A perfect opportunity was appearing right before his eyes. At this moment, Fate used all his strength to stab the mana beast. He had succeeded halfway. The only part left was the core, and he just needed one fatal blow. Things weren't that easy. The core blended into the sand and rolled away, causing Fate to lose focus for a moment and lose track of it. Greed spotted it under the sand and told Fate to give chase. Don't let it escape. The situation was a bit tricky. Fate told Greed to use 10% of his stats, but right now that wasn't enough. If Fate wanted to blow everything away, he would need 20%. Fate didn't hesitate at all and agreed immediately. He decided to use 20% and add the fire element for support, and thanks to that, finally, the young man was victorious. The gluttony skill was activated and a massive amount of stats were added to his status system. Greed had to admire Fate for not hesitating to sacrifice stats from his status system to achieve victory. Along with that, the Sandust magic skill had been added. Greed couldn't help but be happy because now Fate had learned how to fight, but in the end it felt like a life-or-death battle with a monster lord. Fate was also glad that today's training session had yielded good results. Everything was over, and it seemed Fate had completely forgotten about the group of warriors standing behind him. The young man figured they must be terrified after seeing him destroy an entire area like this. Fate was struggling, not knowing how to explain. The situation when they started showering him with praise truly phenomenal. I've never seen a warrior do anything like that. You look suspicious, but you're not a bad fighter. That mana beast was the very leader of the monsters that had caused the desertification to continue for the past few years. The Holy Knights have been desperately hunting and trying to defeat it for so long, but it always managed to escape in the final moments. The warriors were extremely grateful to Fate for helping them eliminate the powerful boss. That much. However, the main concern was the core's immense size, which would be very difficult for Fate to carry back, so they offered to help, an offer Fate obviously didn't refuse. After returning, Fate seemed to collapse deliriously onto his bed. He had returned to the inn at dawn and crashed immediately. Fate was exhausted after the battle, feeling the toll of his gluttony skill, when he suddenly noticed Greed laughing uncontrollably while looking at his face. This made Fate curious, so he picked up a mirror. The moment he saw his reflection, the young man was horrified. He let out a blood-curdling scream. Just as he was yelling, completely confused, Mind pushed the door open and said this was the punishment for someone who draws on another person's face while they're asleep. The girl had just walked out without a stitch of clothing on. She added, "You reap what you sow." Fate's face turned beet red with embarrassment and he couldn't even look. It was the first time he'd seen a girl walk out so casually like that without wearing anything. Mind came closer, took the mirror and twisted Fate's head, forcing the young man to look at his own reflection again. The power of a woman was truly effective. Fate didn't even bother arguing anymore and just yelled, all right, it's all my fault. Now please just put some clothes on." Mind casually replied that she didn't feel embarrassed at all. It was the perfect example of when you're not shy, the other person will be. Fate's face was so flushed he looked like he might pop. After that, Fate went to the counter to claim his reward. The reward for defeating the slime was 100 gold coins. This show of power, a clear sign of his weak to strong journey, made the receptionist gasp in awe, timidly saying the young man must have had a very tough night to have his face turn into such a demonic mess. The young man began to explain, "Well, a few things happened as I was about to leave my room." He breathed a sigh of relief, thanking the heavens that his demon mask was still usable, even though it was completely battered and no longer intact. Mind looked at the reward with sparkling eyes. The girl had originally planned to hunt the monster herself, but Fate had beaten her to it. "You slept all day, so you have to accept the consequences." Fate kindly asked her if she needed the money. Mind confided that her village was very poor. She often had to hunt monsters and use the money to pay for the village's living expenses. After hearing everything, Fate asked Mind if she wanted half the money. "To be honest, I can't think of a way to spend all this, and having so much is making me a little nervous." No matter how you looked at it, the young man was incredibly kind and generous. Fate, using the alias Mukuro, went to the counter and asked the receptionist to split the reward in two, and the receptionist was happy to help. She then informed Fate that not long ago, the city's holy knight had been looking for Mukuro-sama. As for the reason he came to invite Mukuro, the one who defeated the slime, to become his servant. Fate pondered this, thinking that the holy knight of this city had built high walls around it, claiming it was to ward off any sense of oppression, but in reality, he managed the populace by stamping them based on their stats from the oppressive status system to create a clear hierarchy. From this, it was obvious he was definitely not a good person. After finishing his analysis, Fate decided to leave the city as soon as possible. But when he turned around, he saw the holy knight talking to Mine. Fate was completely blindsided. He had just turned to see Mine wielding a massive broadsword. She stood in a threatening posture and with a single swing sent the holy knight flying. "Get lost and stay out of my sight." Fate was also confused, so he asked why she did that. The girl casually replied with the most ridiculous reason imaginable. "Because he called me little girl." She had just sent a man flying, but Mine was confident he was still alive, so it was no big deal. "No big deal, my foot." Fate thought this incident would surely turn into huge trouble. The young man grabbed Mine's hand and hastily dragged her away, told to leave the city immediately, and so the two of them hastily continued their journey together. With Mine, who kept reminding him of his debt to her, Fate headed straight for Gallia. The journey was going fine until disaster struck midway through. In a stroke of bad luck, the carriage wheel snapped in two. The driver said it would take 3 days to fix the problem. Fate in a hurry urged him to repair it as quickly as possible, but the driver used that as an excuse to charge an extra fee. Fate glanced around and luckily saw a village nearby. Mine, yawning widely, then demanded to go check out the village. Fate couldn't help but smile at how impulsive she always was. Greed reminded Fate to stop daydreaming and find a place to stay in the village instead. After a quick look around, it was clear this was a peaceful village. The reason was its proximity to Gallia and Seafort, which meant someone very powerful was protecting this village. Fate never thought he'd get an unexpected day off in such a tranquil countryside village. He wanted to take a quick nap before asking for lodging, but before he could rest, he ran into an elderly holy knight. As soon as the old man saw Fate, he greeted him enthusiastically and introduced himself as Aaron Barbados. Just as Fate was wondering what this appearance meant, the man challenged him to a duel. It was truly a stormy life. Just when he thought he could rest, another bizarre thing happened. Deciding to just get it over with, Fate didn't dare refuse the offer and jumped straight into the fight. After just a few moves, Aaron Barbados had a sword at his neck. It felt like the old man was treating Fate like a child. Using his appraisal eye, Fate saw that Aaron Barbados was level 180. What was even more shocking was that he was hiding stats of over 3 million in his Kai's status system. This was definitely the level of a high-ranking holy knight. Fate knew his own limits, because no matter how hard he tried in his own way, he couldn't defeat Aaron Barbados. The man even knew that Fate was using his appraisal eye. I can tell by the unique movement of your eyes. Stats over 2 million at level 1, a classic weak to strong Chiampa case. Without a method to control it, your body isn't used to the power from your gluttony skill. That's the situation, isn't it? If you accept one condition of mine, I will allow you and your companion to stay in the village. The condition is that during your stay, Fate must follow my instructions. Aaron Barbados was confident that if Fate listened to him, he wouldn't regret it. The young man felt that this old man had no ulterior motives, and this was a great opportunity for him to learn combat skills. So Fate proactively asked Aaron Barbados for help. He planned to be here for 3 days, so he would have to train as quickly as possible. Mine leaned against a tree, sleepily watching Fate train. Aaron Barbados threw a punch straight into his chest, giving the young man a taste of real pain. Fate wondered why he was using martial arts instead of a sword. Barbados believes that controlling one's state with bare hands is best. Fate, while training, marveled at how so powerful would live alone in such a remote village. In truth, Aaron Barbados was trying to soothe his sorrow by fighting the monsters around here. Unknowingly, people with nowhere else to go gathered together and created this village. By the time he noticed he had become their leader, fighting and sharing stories like this was truly a good idea. Fate was extremely intrigued by the idea of soothing sorrow with monsters as Aaron Barbados looked towards Gallia as a holy knight. Monsters had invaded his territory and killed his wife and son. Now he was a man who had lost everything. Therefore, Aaron Barbados now considered teaching Fate as proof to the world that he had truly lived. Hearing this, Fate was stunned and filled with sympathy. After all, he still wanted Fate to pour all his focus into training. After withstanding all of Aaron Barbados's attacks, Fate felt his body could react before he could even consciously think. Gradually, the young man was able to control the situation, a clear sign of his weak to strong progression. However, an ironic twist occurred. When Fate got distracted, he found he couldn't control the hunger from his gluttony skill. Aaron Barbados quickly noticed that Fate's eyes were changing color. He was also very surprised that the boy could move so much better than before, but his core stamina was still limited. Since they were still in the middle of training, Aaron Barbados hoped they would press on and pour all their effort into it. By nightfall, Fate was on the verge of collapse. The old man invited him home for dinner, but the young man suddenly sensed something unusual. It was the scent of monsters emanating from the old castle in the distance. Fate stood there, stunned, staring in that direction until Aaron Barbados called his name again, snapping him out of it. After that, they continued to train diligently during their time there until Fate felt that he was about to reach his limit. That's when Aaron Barbados declared that he had taught Fate most of the basic skills. Next, he just needed to continuously practice the moves he had been taught. 3 days might sound short, but Fate was phenomenal for being able to keep up with Aaron Barbados's grueling training regimen. Now he wanted to teach him the final lesson, using the weapon in his hand to parry his attack. Fate panicked as he only held a wooden stick. However, the old man calmed him, saying he just needed to apply what he had learned. With his eyes, everything would be fine. Fate understood and prepared himself to face Aaron Barbados's attack. If he failed, Fate would be split in two, but he was certain that he could now see and predict the path and angle of the blade. Following the sword's trajectory, Fate's parry was so perfect that Aaron Barbados had to praise him. Fate realized it was because the wooden stick would easily break if he used too much force, so he had to control his power to parry with the least amount of force necessary. While it couldn't exactly be called passing on a legacy or anything, the old man still wanted Fate to use this experience and keep trying. Fate bowed his head in gratitude as tonight would be his last night in this village before departing for Gallia. Mine was silent and ate heartily, but Aaron Baratos also offered praise, saying that as a warrior Mine had performed exceptionally well. Fate was confused when the old man said that even he couldn't compare to her. Mine, hearing this, smugly replied, "You have a good eye. Train for about another 1,000 years, and maybe you'll catch up to me a little." Seeing her act like a brat, Aaron Baratos just laughed and replied, 1,000 years is a bit beyond my reach." Mine stated that was the limit for humans. Fate found every word Mine said confusing because she always acted as if she wasn't human. Fate's stomach was rumbling violently, and it seemed he couldn't endure it any longer. At this moment, the terrible hunger from his gluttony skill would cause him to lose control. In Fate's mind, there was only one option left: to go to the old castle to the west. Seeing his tense expression, Baratos grew curious about Fate's unique constitution, a core part of his status system that compelled him to hunt monster regularly, or his spirit cannot withstand the hunger from his gluttony skill. The old man now understood why Fate was targeting the monsters in the old castle. Fate then realized that Aaron had noticed all along but had remained silent until now. There resides a necromancer known as the Lich Lord, a top-tier monster called the Harbinger of Death. Aaron Baratos opened the window and gazed toward the castle, sighing with a dangerous and mysterious look in his eyes. That ancient castle once belonged to me. My deceased family remains there even now. That former territory of Aaron Baratos is precisely the place where a top-tier monster and his lost family reside. And now he has decided to follow Fate. There, are you truly all right with going there, sir? Aaron Baratos looked down and replied, "In the past, the monster always used the bodies of my family and residents as shields. I was powerless to do anything, so perhaps your arrival is a great twist of fate, allowing me to completely erase that haunting past." He felt very much at ease accompanying Fate at this time. Now the master and disciple will join forces to challenge the ancient castle. The undead guarding it are skeletons level 35 according to the status system. The one standing below possesses skills in two-handed swordsmanship and enhanced agility. The one positioned above has bow attack skills or crossbow proficiency. They appear to be advancing toward the master and disciple. As expected, they can see in the dark, and it seems the pair has been discovered. Aaron Baratos can tell just by observing their movements. Fate had 1,000 questions for his master. "Aren't you going to tell me about your other skills, Sir Aaron?" Baratos decided he would keep his secrets to the very end. These undead constantly loiter around the village, which is why Aaron Baratos could never leave. This time he is completely at ease, having Mine help watch over the village, even though she said her fee was 50 coins. Aaron Baratos felt that hiring a warrior like Mine for a mere 50 coins was an incredible bargain. Now is the time for the master and disciple to begin. Fate volunteered to handle the archer as he wanted to acquire its skills through his gluttony skill. Baratos asked if he could handle the arrows. Fate confidently replied, "Yes, with my current abilities, I can't block all the arrows with my sword, but distance is still distance." Baratos was incredibly surprised to learn that Fate's weapon could change its form. The weapon's functionality didn't stop there either. Fate immediately demonstrated greed superiority, and Baratos was full of praise. A shot right through the middle, truly impressive. However, Baratos immediately interjected with a sobering piece of information. Physical attacks have no effect on beings with immortal attributes like them. This means Fate needs to use an elemental attack, but using fire would easily reveal their position. It might even unfortunately summon unwanted attention. Therefore, the young Chen decided to use his newly acquired weapon for this battle. The undead has now been struck by magic. It was dust magic. The arrow Fate fired was a magic arrow. Baratos noted that this is a technique so difficult to control that even those in the capital gave up on it. He was thoroughly impressed with Fate's weak to strong journey. Greed, although no one could hear it speak, took the chance to boast. "Anyway, it's all thanks to me." Fate had finished off the archer, so the knight would be handled by Baratos. Fate fired a volley of arrows toward the archer. Baratos, determined not to be outdone, readied his weapon and charged forward. It was the very same magic sword that Fate had. After absorbing the spoils with his gluttony skill from a single decisive strike that took them all down, the master and disciple had to flee quickly before more enemies arrived. Fate was still stunned from witnessing the previous scene where they completely wiped out the soldiers at the main gate with a single strike. His range and power were on a completely different level. Truly worthy of a master, just as predicted, the zombies began to swarm in. And now, the master and student duo must break through them to enter the castle and accept the mission. Keeping an eye on the rooftops, Baratos would defeat the enemies who were blocking their path. The weapon the old man was holding was just a replica, not his signature sword, so it would take some time for him to use Grand Cross again. By holding the sword still to pause its form, it would become something with offensive capabilities. Barbados planned to teach Fate this technique right here and now. He was certainly taking his time. Fate asked Greed about the extent of the damage to the houses. Isn't it too minimal? Shouldn't something as big as the main gate have been destroyed? According to Greed, they were targeting a time when Aaron was away to attack the defenseless villagers. This meant the enemy possessed both strength and intelligence. Fate realized he couldn't keep being hesitant like before. It seemed that if he got too excited about his gluttony skill and let his guard down, he would shift into a state of starvation. The current number of enemies was overwhelming. This was a perfect opportunity for Greed to test the results of their training. Fate finally managed to break through inside. The enemy had stopped pursuing them midway. The master and student stood there as a door opened. It seemed like an invitation. Barbados let out a sigh. "I'm ready." As the two stepped inside, candles lit up by themselves. In front of them was a group of people. Among them was even someone who looked exactly like Fate, so much so that he himself was astonished. He was still wondering why that person looked so much like him when he saw Barbados seemingly fall into a hallucination and panic. His mind was in turmoil and he couldn't control himself. He approached his family members. The demons disguised as Barbados's relatives were speaking words of love to him. "Welcome home, father. I've been waiting for you, dear." Fate now realized this was definitely a trap. The trap of the monster was targeting Barbados's family, who were all dead. This must be a magical illusion. It was so realistic that they looked alive, but he was 100% certain they had passed away. Fate yelled out, "Aaron Barbados, let's get out of here now." As the old man started to turn his head, the monster disguised as his son began to attack his father with a sword. Fortunately, he snapped out of it just in time. "It's all right, I was just reminiscing about the old days for a moment." Barbados moved closer to them. "Sorry to have kept you waiting. I will now set you free." The demon then began to reveal its true form. "Even though you were loyal to the royal family and died at the hands of monsters, you now come here to kill us? How terrible." The wife also spoke up, "Honey, we're still alive, don't say such frightening things." Greed saw Fate standing nearby and asked if he had any intention of helping. Fate was worried. If he had to defeat them, their souls would be devoured by his gluttony skill. A soul devoured by gluttony would live forever in anticipation, only to be filled up and torn apart repeatedly. An eternal hell with no salvation. Inside, Fate trembled. The name of his skill, a key part of his status system, accurately reflected its sin. It's truly horrifying to endure that after death. This part of his weak to strong journey was a grim reminder that he shouldn't be the one to defeat them. Barbados called out to Fate, "Leave everyone and my family to me. You go and find the culprit now." Fate acknowledged the order and immediately ran off to eliminate the boss. He could sense its presence in this area, but couldn't pinpoint its exact location yet. But he was certain it was there. The young man began to pinpoint its location after awakening and drew closer. "It has finally revealed itself. It seems my sensory ability, a part of the gluttony skill, is quite useful." The insect began to emerge and declared, "Your game of hide and seek is over." Through his appraisal eye, he saw it was the leader at level 100, and its skills were illusion, magic, enhanced mana, and spirit. This was the first monster Fate had seen with stats exceeding 10 million. He just hoped it wouldn't go berserk like the last one when absorbed. Greed urged him, "Fate, what are you waiting for? Show me the results of your training." Fate focused with all his might, demonstrating his progress from weak to strong by realizing the opponent wielded a giant scythe unsuitable for close-quarters combat. It would surely keep its distance and attack from afar, so he needed to act smarter. Fate decided to evade its attacks and slowly close the distance. Once he was near, a single blow was enough to wound it. Fate landed a strike and it began to flee. Greed sensed it had realized Fate couldn't attack and was now resorting to dirty tricks as wraiths surrounded him. They began to taunt and scream at Fate, enraging him. He let out a single shout and they all collapsed to the floor. Barbados appeared, saying, "Sorry to keep you waiting." His family and the others were just like these wraiths. Barbados had cut their tendons to immobilize them, and now he would do the same to the rest. He slowly approached the boss. The boss taunted, "Your people are here too. Are you sure about this?" It attacked Barbados's emotional weak point again, but he had changed. "If I had decided sooner, I wouldn't have struggled this much," he thought. Today, Barbados resolved to make the most difficult slash of his life. The boss's minions started making the rattling sounds of skeletons. Fate gritted his teeth. "Damn it! At this rate, I won't be able to defeat it." Greed whined from the sidelines. Well, I guess I'll let it slide this time. Fate decided to use his ultimate move. Master and student understood each other in an instant, combining their power for a grand cross. A dual-coordinated attack to exterminate the boss. The combination attack left it charred black and utterly defeated. With the matter settled, Barbatos went to his wife and son. Forgive me for not being there when you needed me most. After his wife and son spoke their final words, they vanished completely. Fate then fired one last shot straight into the boss's head to finish it off, and he began to activate his gluttony skill. The stats flooded into his status system in a frenzied, rebellious surge nothing like before. This absorption made Fate feel as if he was suffocating. To endure the overwhelming sensation, he tried to recall his training in the desert. After a few minutes of endurance, Fate started to feel better. He was sweating profusely and his body was so overloaded that he began to cry tears of blood. Still, Fate refused to let anything, not even the gluttony skill, disturb the precious farewell between Barbatos and his family. After the two returned, just as they stepped out of the castle, Barbatos declared he would clear out all the remaining monsters in the city and clean the place up. The decision was very sudden, but Barbatos had promised to start his life anew, so he wanted to rebuild the city. The first step was to eliminate all the monsters. Fate wasn't feeling satisfied either, so he decided to join Barbatos immediately. However, before he could even catch his breath, the old man declared, "Then let's not waste any more time." Fate was stunned. "What are you talking about? Right now? Why the sudden rush?" Barbatos scratched his head sheepishly and said, "Actually, after that last battle, I think I might have surpassed my limits. I can't believe my own hands. You said you surpassed your own limits. You mean you actually broke past your level cap in the status system?" The personal level cap for each individual Batos had only heard of such things in ancient legends, but now he truly had become 10 times stronger than before. He believed it was because he fought alongside Fate. The young man still couldn't believe that such a ridiculous ability could exist. Greed explained that fighting alongside someone who wields the god-defying gluttony skill could produce such a result, but it only happens when both parties open their hearts to each other. Fate said exasperatedly that things like this, Greed should have told him sooner. Now it was time for him and Batos to set out and eliminate the monsters in the city. Fate intended to compete with the old man to see who could kill more monsters. Batos thought the idea was interesting, so the two of them began the competition to reclaim what was lost. The master and student duo had just returned, only to be met with Mind's tense face. The situation was that they were one day late. After defeating the crown monster they had agreed to eliminate every monster in the city, and there were far more of them than imagined, so it took them a very long time. Now only money could solve everything. As soon as Fate called his name, Aaron understood and handed Mine a bag. As soon as she opened it, the girl's eyes lit up because it was full of money. It was even double the promised amount. This matter was considered handled. Fate felt lucky that Mine was a girl who loved money. Now after resting, Fate would head to Galia. In any case, he was already more than 3 days behind schedule. Batos told Fate to come back after he finished what he needed to do because he had something important to say. The specific details would be shared when he returned. Batos gave him another bundle of items and urged him to survive and come back. After a long journey, Fate and Mine finally arrived. This was Galia, the monster territory. Fate felt bewildered because they had walked from the town at the last carriage stop. But in the end, he still didn't understand where they were going. Mine nonchalantly replied, "I already explained it." The girl actually hadn't explained a darn thing, only telling Fate his path from weak to strong involved fighting tough enemies and paying off his debt. Fate was currently very worried about Roxy and just wanted to get there quickly. In a moment of carelessness, they were attacked. But luckily Mine managed to defend in time. She reminded him that this was Galia, so being attacked was not strange at all. So don't let your guard down. The thing that attacked Fate was the most numerous monster in Galia called orcs. They were a rather intelligent bunch, so they would team up to attack their enemies. Mine thought that they should now fight as if it were a competitive match. As soon as she finished speaking, the horde of orcs simultaneously fired a volley of arrows at Fate. At this rate, he would have a lot to worry about later. While the young man was still bewildered, not knowing what to do next, Mine unleashed a decisive slash that split the stone ground. The dust cloud made it impossible for the monsters to see their surroundings clearly, but using that opportunity, the two of them advanced on them and launched a continuous assault, taking them down one by one. Using the dust as a smokescreen, she truly lived up to her reputation. Hearing the praise, Mine's face turned beet red with embarrassment. This girl was truly strange. She has no shame being seen unclothed but gets embarrassed by a compliment. Mine was getting more and more fired up, and it seemed she wouldn't spare a single one of them. At this rate, it's likely she wanted to take care of all of them herself. Fate didn't even have to get his hands dirty. After dealing with the orcs, they continued to move. They arrived at a city-like area that looked like it had been ravaged long ago. This is a wasteland. That's what they call it, but in reality it's about to become just a ruin. Mine spoke up calmly. This is my birthplace. I was taken to the royal capital right after I was born, but this place is important to me. According to known information, Gallia was destroyed 400 years ago. Mine was dazedly searching for something when she suddenly shouted, "Found it!" What Mine had spotted was a massive giant egg. Greed provided information that it was an ancient military weapon, a chimera which was experimentally operated. In ancient Gallia, it was created by grafting monsters around a core host. It's the worst kind of failed product. A strange thing is that all of its functions were supposed to have been sealed, yet it's still alive. Through his appraisal eye, Fate identified it as Chimera Hanun. His status system showed its stats: stamina at 26 million, strength at 29 million, magic at 24 million, spirit at 28 million, and agility at 14 million. All of its stats were incredibly high. Fate felt a bit intimidated. Don't tell me you're planning to defeat this thing. Mine argued that it was still in its infant state, so she was completely capable of defeating it. As long as it still has a soul, it can't truly die no matter how many times you kill it. That's the major problem. That's precisely why Mine needed Fate here. To consume its soul, Fate's power of gluttony is required. The gluttony skill is the one thing that can overcome the concepts established by God. Mine was feeling this more and more deeply. Fate laughed awkwardly. Whatever. In any case, can I really win against a higher-ranked opponent? This was a true test of his weak-to-strong journey. After a moment of thought, Greed urged his master to get fired up. If you fall here, your dream of protecting Roxy will never be realized. Those words motivated Fate immensely. He understood that better than anyone. After they finished preparing, Mine took the lead and attacked first. She rushed forward and with one slash cracked the egg in two. The monster finally appeared. Fate was truly surprised to see a human figure on its body similar to Mine and himself when his skill goes berserk. Greed said it was just trying to intimidate them, and Fate needed to look away immediately. He wouldn't be able to fight if he kept hesitating. Fate turned and asked Mine, "Who is that girl in reality that is the Chimera's core, the wielder of gluttony?" Mine wanted Fate to land the finishing blow on the core. Fate was still hesitant and didn't dare to act. Mine reminded him not to be fooled by its appearance. It's just a monster wearing a human shell. If you keep saying such naive things, you will definitely die. As soon as she spoke, the chimera activated a circle of fire on the ground around it. It was launching a magic attack, indirectly using magma. The black scythe couldn't cut through it. While Fate was frozen in place, Mine thankfully shouted for him to get back before its explosion. Mine said she would be the vanguard and Fate would provide support with his magic bow. It seemed she intended to engage it and blow away the magma flow. With that said, Mine immediately sprang into action. She charged forward and severed one of the chimera's arms. Fate pinned it down. He would use a petrification arrow and the initial attempt was a success. However, our hero celebrated too soon as its arm began to regenerate. It was a military weapon capable of fighting alone for extended periods. For now, he needed to continue supporting Mine until a better opportunity presented itself. Greed reminded his master that if he missed the chance, they would just create another one. Mine was currently struggling to fight the monster alone. At first there seemed to be no problem, but through observation its attack power was clearly increasing. Mine's weapon is the kind that the more it's used, the more its weight and combat power increase. Despite its overwhelming strength and destructive force, it negatively impacts the user's agility. That is why Mine's speed is gradually decreasing bit by bit. Now, more importantly, Fate needs to focus on holding it back. He also begins to take action as Mine attacks more and more ferociously and the chimera is starting to scream in agony. At this rate, Fate will be able to devour it with his gluttony skill, yet a strange pressure is bearing down on him. The situation looks dire as the giant monster realizes it cannot win this way. Therefore, it has decided to recklessly evolve into its adult form. The threat is coming from this new form and Fate is truly frozen before the adult chimera. An explosive attack is imminent and Mine tells Fate to hide behind her, but the moment he sees a girl standing so bravely to shield him, Fate feels utterly humiliated that as a man he is being protected by someone else. He thinks back to his powerless days in the capital, a true weak-to-strong journey, wondering why he even came to Gallia. How could he dare declare he would become Roxy's strength? thinking this fate wants to change to be like the adventurers who fought beside him like the master. Swordsman Aaron and like mine, whose rank in the status system is so much higher than his. Fate wants to become someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with them and fight together. Fate realizes if he doesn't change now, there will never be a better moment, and the young man resolves to unleash his maximum power. Fate seriously tells mine that at this rate, they will lose, so he will personally deploy his power in its semi-berserk state. Greed agrees with him, but mine is a little worried, wondering if he can actually do it. Greed adds that being forced over the edge and choosing to step over it yourself are completely different things. Mine reminds him that if he can't control it and overuses the power, he will be consumed entirely. Fate knows this, and he must suppress that urge while using his full skill power. Doing so suddenly is incredibly difficult, but even so, to fight and grow stronger, he needs the gluttony skill. Fate immediately activates the semi-berserk state. By surrendering himself to the gluttony skill, he knows he will be rapidly corrupted. An agonizing hunger for souls twists inside him, feeling as if something is squirming within his body. At this moment, Fate must identify the precise limit where he can remain sane. He must not cross that line, because if he fails, here everything will be over, and Fate is trying with all his might to suppress it. He endures moments of pure agony as mine's worried gaze is fixed on Fate. He has now stabilized, which is beyond mine's expectations, and the young man confidently declares that now is the perfect time to counterattack.